But wait, what's MetalStorm? It's a truly free-to-play game. Engage in live 5v5 air combat with friends and other real players across the world. Collect and upgrade the world's most advanced and legendary jets and dominate the skies. Available on both PC and mobile devices. Join for free today and conquer the skies. Only on MetalStorm.
The F106 Delta Dart came about due to the 1954 interceptor program, and it was originally envisioned as the ultimate interceptor. It was a derivative of the 102 Delta Dagger and originally was designated the F102B until the U.S. Air Force redesignated it the F106. Made by Convair, the F106 did not have a gun, instead carrying its AIM-4 Falcon air-to-air missiles within an internal weapons bay, giving it a clean exterior conducive for supersonic flight. Its major differences from the 102 were it had a more powerful Pratt & Whitney J75 turbojet engine, had redesigned air inlets featuring variable geometry inlet ducts for a multi-range of supersonic speeds, and it was slightly larger as well. On December 26, 1956, the first prototype made its maiden flight. After having lesser performance than anticipated, the U.S. Air Force only ordered 350 of the original 1,000 F-106s. The F-106 was the primary all-weather interceptor during most of the Cold War era, being the last specialist interceptor used by the U.S. Air Force to date. It was never exported or even used in combat. A competitive evaluation was conducted in the 1960s against the F-4 Phantom II, and the F-4 was found marginally superior. Yet the F-106 was around for 2 decades more due to the F-4's need in many other roles. Convair proposed some improvements, especially in radar, communications, and avionics, but none were really pursued. In 1970, over Montana, an unmanned F-106 recovered from a flat spin after the pilot ejected, belly landing in a snow-covered field relatively intact. It was recovered and flown for years afterwards. In the 1980s, gradually the F-106 was withdrawn from the Air Force service. The McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle air superiority fighter made dedicated interceptors basically obsolete. The Air National Guard had some, but most were converted into target drones, redesignated QF-106 under the Pacer 6 program, and used up in 1998. A handful of F-106s were operated by NASA for experimental purposes like the Eclipse project through 1998. The F-106 was designed from the F-102, which is the winner of the United States Air Force's 1954 interceptor program. The F-102 had quite a few design changes on its way to becoming the F-106. Along with the duct area addition and engine change, the original MX-1179 fire control system wasn't ready, so the MX-1 was used because it was already used on subsonic models. This became the F-102A, and despite barely able to perform up to speed, the U.S. Air Force still sent out a production contract to Convair. By December 1951, the Air Force had further improvements, replacing the engine yet again, replacing the F-102A's Pratt & Whitney J57 engine with a more powerful Whitney J67, which was a Bristol Olympus production under license. The MX-1179 was finally readily available, and the intended result was supposed to be the ultimate interceptor. By August 1953, the Olympus design engine was behind schedule, and in early 1955, the U.S. Air Force approved the Pratt & Whitney J75 turbojet. It was a larger engine with greater airflow, which led to the variable geometry duct. The fuselage grew slightly longer and slightly enlarged area of the plane, and it also had a redesignated vertical tail fin. The two-position afterburner exhaust nozzle was used for idle thrust control, held open to decrease thrust by 40%, resulting in slower taxiing and less brake wear. On April 18, 1956, an extended production contract for 17 F-102Bs was issued to Convair, representing substantially fewer aircraft than originally anticipated. On June 17, 1956, the Air Force redesignated it the F-106A. On August 18, 1956, the U.S. Air Force issued a systems development directive that called for development and production of the F-106 to occur simultaneously. NAC attributed this policy as being responsible for the F-106's later problems. The U.S. Air Force expected the F-106 to enter service by 1958. The F-106's first flights demonstrated disappointing flight results, having less performance gains than anticipated, specifically in speed and acceleration, which were far lower than even Convair's estimates. These, plus other problems, almost was responsible for the termination of the program. Yet the U.S. Air Force decided to stay with the 106 since Air Defense Command heavily advocated for the F-106. The U.S. Air Force ultimately ordered 350, which was far less than the 1,000 originally planned. The delivery of the F-106A, a single-seater, and F-106B, the two-seater training variant, began in October 1959. On December 15, 1959, Major Joseph W. Rogers set a world speed record of 1,526 miles per hour at 40,500 feet. That same year, Charles E. Myers hit 1,544 miles per hour in the same aircraft. A specialized interceptor, the F-106 was equipped with the Hughes MA-1 fire control system, which could be linked to the SAGE semi-automatic ground environment network for ground control interception missions. The MA-1 proved to be very troublesome and was upgraded over 60 times in the 106's life. The F-106 originally had no provision for a gun or provision to carry a bomb. It was armed with either 4 Hughes AIM-4G infrared or 4 AIM-4EF SAR semi-active radar homing missiles, and it also had one 1.5 kiloton warhead, an Air-2 Genie, which was an unguided air-to-air rocket intended to be fired into enemy formations. Drop tanks could be carried on under each wing, and reduced radar signature was due to the internal weapons bay on the F-106s. The F-106's first ejection seat was a catapult Weber interim seat. It used an explosive charge to propel it clear of the aircraft. It was not a 0-0 seat and inadequate for supersonic and ground ejections, as well as ejections at speeds below 120 knots and at lower than 2,000 feet. The second seat, a Convair ICESC Industry Crew Escape System Committee supersonic rotational B seat called the bobsled, hence the B designation. The F-106 was capable of Mach 2. The B seat ejection sequence was far too complicated, and there were several unsuccessful ejections resulting in pilot fatalities. The third seat, the Weber 00 Rocat rocket catapult, was finally deemed a satisfactory replacement and retrofitted to the F-106s after 1965. The F-106 was troubled by numerous tech issues other than the ejection seat. There was fuel flow issues, generator issues, combustor starter malfunctions, and briefly in December 1959, all F-106s were grounded due to an accidental canopy jettison mid-flight. Not all problems were resolved by 1961. The ejection seat killed the first 12 pilots to eject from the 106. The replacement of the ejection seat and other problems being fixed, the performance of the F-106 became somewhat popular amongst its pilots. The F-106 was the second highest sequentially numbered PF aircraft to enter service before the system was reset under the 1962 U.S. Tri-Service Aircraft Designation System. The F-106's official name, Delta Dart, was rarely used, with the aircraft universally known as the 6. The 6 replaced the venerable F-86 Sabre and the Northrop F-89 Scorpion, but the F-106 never saw combat. The Air Force conducted the Operation High Speed, a showdown between the F-106 and F-4 Phantom II in fly-off competition. The F-4 was as capable as the F-106 as an interceptor and could carry a bomb load equivalent to the F-105 Thunder Chief. The F-106 was still progressively being updated with improved avionics, modified infrared search and track system, modified wings, and a streamlined supersonic wing tanks. better instrumentation, an in-flight fueling receptacle, and a rest hook for landing emergencies. The 6 was a reasonable match for the F-4 in a dogfight, with superior high-altitude performance and maneuverability, though the Phantom had a better radar and greater armament load. Eventually, an optical gun sight and provision for an M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon, replacing the Air-2 Genie missile rocket system, was implemented. In 1981, the 6s were passed to the Air National Guard, being replaced by the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle. The F-106 was removed from service or was in service until 1988. The Aerial Target Squadron turned some 106s into QF-106As, which were target drones. The last of those was destroyed in 1998. 6 F-106s went to NASA for test purposes through 1998. They were used in aerial performance testing, lightning strike test, which one was struck 714 times without damage, and data acquisition was performed by 1980s state-of-the-art digital waveform recorders. NASA used 6 drones in its Eclipse project. Dryden Flight Research Center used Project Eclipse to demonstrate the feasibility of a reusable aerotow launch vehicle. The object was to tow a QF-106 in flight with an AC-141A transport aircraft, checking the possibility of towing and launching a space launch vehicle from behind a tow plane. The Cornfield bomber was the name given to the F-106 that recovered from a flat spin after the pilot ejected over Montana. This happened on February 2nd, 1970. The pilot was Captain George Faust of the 71st Fighter Intercept Squadron. After ejecting during a flat spin, the plane stabilized and landed in a snow-covered field on its belly, suffering minor damage. The Cornfield bomber was recovered, returned to service, and is now on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. In MetalStorm by Starform, the Delta Wing 106 Delta Dart is a true interceptor, and it actually has a gun with 4 medium-range radar-guided missiles on a fast platform that is very hard to maneuver, though. This bird is for a certain type of pilot. And this is the end of this one. Thank you. Please leave messages down below, subscribe, hit the bell button, and until next time, this is Big Duke 6.